Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the darker corners of the 16-bit era, a game that often gets overlooked despite being one of the best entries in its franchise. I'm talking about Castlevania Bloodlines on the Sega Genesis. This is the only mainline Castlevania title released for Sega's system, and it carries a legacy that's both fascinating and tragic. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives, and comment below your memories with this classic. Let us know what games you'd like to see covered next. And at the end of this video, stick around and click one of the videos on your screen to keep the retro vibes going. By the early 90s, the Castlevania series had already made its mark on the original Nintendo and Super Nintendo. Fans were familiar with Simon Belmont, Dracula, and the gothic horror tone that defined the franchise. But when Konami decided to bring Castlevania to the Sega Genesis in 1994, they didn't simply port over an existing game. Instead, they created an original story and set of characters tailored for the system. This was significant because it was the only Castlevania game designed specifically for Sega hardware. Unlike the Famicom and Super Nintendo Castlevania titles, Bloodlines leaned heavily into Sega's technical strengths: faster gameplay, flashy sprite scaling, and violent detail that pushed the Genesis hardware in ways other games couldn't. In fact, in some European markets, the game had to be censored and renamed Castlevania, the New Generation, toning down some of the blood and gore. Instead of focusing on the Belmonts, Bloodlines gave us two new protagonists: John Morris, the son of Quincey Morris from Bram Stoker's Dracula, and Eric Lecarde, a Spanish nobleman wielding a deadly spear. This was the first time Castlevania featured two playable characters with completely different playstyles, years before it became standard in action games. The game's plot stretched beyond Dracula's castle, taking players across Europe, from Greece to Italy to Germany, giving it a more world tour feel compared to the contained castle settings of earlier titles. This global journey was partly inspired by Sega's push for more cinematic experiences that stood out against Nintendo.
Introducing Castlevania Bloodlines for Sega Genesis, the most horrifying vampire hunt ever. Two new heroes, plus hordes of evil enemies and ghastly ghouls. It's intense adventure from Konami.
Konami developed and published the game, but what's fascinating is the timing. By the early 90s, Konami was juggling a golden era of franchises: Contra, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Metal Gear, and Castlevania. The development team for Bloodlines actually included many staff members who would later go on to work on the critically acclaimed Castlevania, Symphony of the Night. You can see early experimentation in Bloodlines' level design and storytelling that hinted at that direction. Before Bloodlines, the developers had experience with the original Nintendo Castlevania titles and Konami's arcade hits like Haunted Castle, an arcade version of Castlevania from 1988. That arcade experiment was infamous for its brutal difficulty, but laid some groundwork for Bloodlines' darker and faster-paced combat. In terms of sales, Bloodlines didn't reach the commercial success of Super Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo. Part of that had to do with the Genesis' smaller user base in Japan, and Konami's historically closer relationship with Nintendo. Still, in North America and Europe, the game performed respectably, and critics praised its graphics, music, and challenging gameplay. Interestingly, because it was a Genesis exclusive, it was once considered one of the harder Castlevania games to track down, which helped cement its cult classic status among collectors. When comparing Bloodlines to other Castlevania entries, its tone stands out. Where Super Castlevania 4 leaned heavily on atmospheric design and the iconic Belmont whip mechanics, Bloodlines pushed the envelope with speed, violence, and unique level mechanics like rotating rooms, collapsing towers, and massive sprite manipulation. More recent titles like Castlevania, Lords of Shadow drew inspiration from Bloodlines' more cinematic scope. While classics like Rondo of Blood influenced it with branching stages and multiple playable characters. In many ways, Bloodlines was a bridge between the old-school linear Castlevania games and the experimentation that would later define the Metroidvania era. Here's a fact many fans don't know. Bloodlines was originally planned for both Genesis and the Sega CD, but the CD version was scrapped early in development. There is no Famicom or NES version of Bloodlines. Its design was simply too advanced for 8-bit systems. However, the game has resurfaced in modern times. It's part of the Castlevania Anniversary Collection on modern platforms like PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC, allowing new generations to experience it. As for arcade presence, while there wasn't a direct arcade port of Bloodlines, Konami's earlier Haunted Castle arcade game is often seen as its spiritual ancestor, with similar gothic designs and punishing gameplay. Though Bloodlines itself didn't directly inspire a movie or anime, it contributed to the broader Castlevania lore that has since exploded into other media. The Netflix Castlevania anime, for example, drew from various entries in the franchise, and while it focused on Trevor Belmont, fans spotted nods to Bloodlines' lore.
Are all Belmonts like this?
Irritating. Oh, yes.
The game's ties to Bram Stoker's Dracula also gave it unique literary influence, weaving real-world gothic horror into the Castlevania timeline. Comics based on Castlevania sometimes reference characters like John Morris, cementing Bloodlines as a crucial part of the canon. Today, Castlevania. Bloodlines stands as one of the most unique and daring entries in the series. It's a reminder that Konami was willing to take risks, giving Sega fans something truly special rather than a simple port. For collectors, it's a must-have. For fans, it's a missing link in the saga of Dracula and the Belmont clan. And for anyone diving into the franchise today, it's proof that Castlevania was never afraid to experiment. So, that's the story of Castlevania Bloodlines on the Sega Genesis. A brutal, stylish, and unforgettable piece of the franchise's history. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss one of our deep dives into gaming history. Comment below your memories of this title and what games you'd like to see us cover next. And before you go, click one of the videos on your screen to keep exploring more legendary games with us. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.